the most important thing to take of the 5 days intervening from the strike on U.S. forces and this counterstrike today is just the care and the precision that's involved in trying to get this right.
It's the start of what may herald a wave of significant American attacks in response to that drone strike by Iranian-sponsored groups on a US base in Jordan on Sunday. And you'll recall that the strikes have come shortly after President Biden attended the repatriation of 3 dead troops and met their relatives. Let's talk to Lieutenant General Douglas Lute, former US ambassador to NATO and US Deputy National Security Advisor for Iraq and Afghanistan under President Bush and Obama. Lieutenant, thank you very much for joining us.
It's good to be with you.
Your reaction to this breaking news?
Well, it's been somewhat anticipated since the strike on Sunday that resulted in the death of these 3 American service members and the wounding of some 40 others. That strike was very much clearly attributed to an Iranian-based Shia militia, probably flying drones out of either Syria or Iraq and striking this American base in Jordan. So we've anticipated for some days now this retaliatory strike. It's a bit different, though, in scale. The first reports are nearly 100 individual targets were struck in this, as you said, first wave of what could be a bit of a prolonged campaign. So this is different than the strikes over the last month.
What do you make of the timing, just hours after the president attended a solemn repatriation of American fallen and met their relatives?
I'm not sure that there's much of a connection between that ceremony with the president and the families of the fallen in Dover, Delaware, and the beginning of the strikes today. I think more likely the targeting process, which has to be very deliberate, make sure we're hitting military targets, make sure to the greatest extent possible we're protecting civilians, whether what I refer to as the military physics of the strike is probably more dominant in terms of the timing.
When you talk of the military physics, what do you mean? What does it mean for the targets, potential civilian casualties, and potential for escalation?
Well, we take very deliberate care in developing these targets. We want to make sure that we're hitting what we want to hit, and that what we want to hit can be linked to the militias responsible for the strike on Sunday. So there's a very deliberate targeting process. It doesn't happen in hours. It happens over days. And then the munitions, the strike platforms, in this case, at least several bombers that came all the way from the United States, all that has to be assembled into a choreography that puts the right effects on the right target with confidence that we're not going to affect innocent civilians. So it takes some time to put that together carefully.
Well, indeed, because this attack took place at the base in Jordan on Sunday. The president said that day we shall respond, and 2 days later he said we shall respond strongly at a time and place of our choosing. And then it was reported the targets had been chosen. But what about the 5 days, 6 days between the attack and today, and the potential response of those targets in Iraq and Syria? They will have known this is coming, and they will have moved, you would imagine, the hardware that you think is responsible out of the direct line of fire.
Well, it's very difficult to look behind the screen here and understand completely what's behind this targeting process. So in some cases, we have the capability to watch as things move around the battlefield, and we can track them. We can keep what is referred to in the military language as an unblinking eye of surveillance on the key targets. So the fact that they've moved may not be actually decisive. And as I said, I think the most important thing to take of the 5 days intervening from the strike on U.S. forces and this counterstrike today is just the care and the precision that's involved in trying to get this right.
And what about the Iranians who the US accuses of sponsoring these militias? The foreign ministry spokesman Nasser Kanani did say a couple of days ago it was not involved in the decision making, and I quote, of resistance groups in how they choose to defend Palestinians or their own countries. And their intelligence minister, Ismail Khatib, said regional armed groups aligned with Iran respond to, quote, American aggressors at their own discretion. So, i.e., we don't know what they're going to do. You can't pin this on us.
Well, first of all, the background reality here is that Iran organizes, trains, and equips militia groups outside of the control of local governments that range geographically from across the Arabian Peninsula, beginning in Yemen, in the east, all the way to the Mediterranean Sea. So through Iraq, through Syria, into Lebanon, and into Gaza. So there's no question of Iranian sponsorship of these groups. It is likely true that in the course of setting up and organizing these militias, Iran does not have complete control of them. One of the downsides of this sort of sponsoring of militias is that the sponsor tends to lose control over time. So I suspect that American intelligence, enhanced by Allied intelligence, for example, British intelligence, probably can detect who is responsible for what, and can make more sense than you and I of the statements coming out of Tehran.
But at what point does Tehran say, okay, they struck our proxies, our friends, but hey, they didn't strike us, so we can carry on, because in the end, we are a regional power. The US doesn't want to provoke us into doing anything further than what we've done, so we're okay.
Well, it is clear that one of the overall objectives in the region for the United States is that the ongoing fight in Gaza does not expand to other fronts. So either to the north into Lebanon, into the West Bank, and it's already to some extent expanded by way of the Houthi attacks from Yemen into the Red Sea.
Well, it's already in the West Bank, though, isn't it? Because, of course, although the attacks came from Gaza, the Israelis are putting down what they say is rebellion or agitation in the West Bank. Lots of people are being killed there. And that's another reason why there's more pressure from the north from Hezbollah. It's already spread.
Well, you're right. It is not completely contained in Gaza. It's not neatly contained, but of course, that's the nature of these conflicts. But the notion is the aim, the strategic aim is to not allow further destabilization in the region, further escalation of the conflict. So I think that's the overall objective here, as well as to hold accountable those who struck and killed American troops in Jordan. So there's a balancing act to be achieved here between further escalation and holding those accountable.
All right. Lieutenant General Douglas Lute, former U.S. ambassador to NATO, thank you very much indeed for joining us on Times Radio.